Imagine waking up every single morning and the first thought that crosses your mind isn't about your to-do list or, your obligations, but about what you choose to do with your day.
Hmm.
What passions would you explore? What new skills might you learn? What experiences would you seek out if your time truly felt like your own?
That's a really powerful vision, isn't it?
Yeah.
That sense of complete autonomy over how we spend our most precious resource, our time.
It really makes you think.
It does.
And that's precisely what we're diving into today here on Book Talk, finance. We're going to explore some, well, really powerful ideas from the book, Financial Freedom, a proven path to all the money you will ever need.
Grant Sabatier's book. Yeah, great choice.
Exactly. And the dedication really sets the tone. He wrote it to anyone who's stressed about money and wants more from life. I hear you.
That really resonates, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It acknowledges that very real stress so many people feel
Yeah.
and promises a practical way forward. It's not just abstract theory.
Right. It feels very empathetic. And Grant, well, he's not just talking the talk. He actually walked this path himself, famously went from having just $2.26 in his bank account to becoming a millionaire in only 5 years.
Yeah, that story is incredible. It gives his advice so much weight, It shows these aren't just pie-in-the-sky ideas. They're strategies that he personally proved can work.
Absolutely. That real-world experience makes a huge difference. So in our time together today, this book talk is going to dig into some of the core principles from his book.
We've tried to pick out the ones we think can really offer you, the listener, some empowering perspectives, and maybe more importantly, some actionable steps for your own financial journey.
Our goal is really to pull out those key insights, the ones that might spark a shift in how you think about money and give you some clear direction toward, well, greater financial well-being and more control over your life.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's kick things off with a really foundational idea Grant explores, this concept of viewing money as freedom. He shares his own story in the book, a real eye-opener. After getting fired from his first job, he calculated he'd put in 1,400 hours.
Wow.
And after taxes, he'd only taken home about $15,500. And worse, he was sitting under like $12,000 in credit card debt.
Oof. That's rough. That feeling of working so hard and still ending up behind, it's a powerful motivator for change, I imagine.
It clearly was for him. It led to this huge shift in his mindset. He moved away from that traditional equation of, work just equals money.
Right.
Instead, he started seeing money as a tool, a means to buy something far more valuable.
Time.
Exactly, time. Time for things that actually mattered to him, love, learning, caring for people, playing, contributing. All those things that make life rich.
It reframes the whole purpose of earning and saving, doesn't it? It's not just about piling up cash. It's about strategically using money to build a life that aligns with what you truly value.
He even uses this term wage slavery, which sounds intense, but it captures that feeling of being forced to work just to survive, lacking real choice.
Yeah, feeling trapped in that cycle.
And the goal he sets out is to become an owner of wealth, where your money starts working for you, generating more money, instead of you constantly trading your time for it.
Which brings us straight to compounding, right? That's the engine that makes this possible.
Absolutely. The book really hammers home the power of compounding, how money invested early just grows and grows almost on its own.
It's like planting a tree. The earlier you plant it, the more time it has to grow and eventually provide shade or fruit or whatever you need. That early start is key.
Which leads perfectly into the next big idea. Time is actually more valuable than money.
A fundamental truth, but one we often forget in the day-to-day grind.
Yeah, Grant really challenges that constant trade-off, giving up your limited time for a paycheck, especially if the job itself drains you or feels meaningless. He asks, should the best years of your life just be burnt out between paychecks?
It forces you to think about the real cost of your job, beyond just the hours worked. What's the cost to your well-being, your relationships, your passions?
And he points to the future, all the uncertainties. Things like Social Security, rising healthcare costs, inflation constantly eating away at savings. It's a call to be proactive, really.
Definitely. You can't just assume everything will work out. Taking control of your finances builds resilience against those unknowns.
And this isn't just about waiting until you're 65 or 70. He talks about the possibility of achieving financial independence much earlier.
Right. And he clarifies, it doesn't necessarily mean you stop working entirely unless you want to.
Exactly. It's about reaching a point where work becomes a choice, not a necessity. You gain control over your time. That's the real prize.
Having the freedom to decide how you spend your days, whether that's pursuing passion projects, working part-time, volunteering, or just relaxing, that's incredibly appealing. What would you do with that kind of freedom? It's a great question to ask yourself.
It really is. Okay, so if that's the goal, how do we even start to get a handle on it? Grant says the first crucial step is defining what financial freedom actually means to you.
Yes, personalization is key here. It's not one size fits all.
Right. For one person, maybe it's just being completely debt-free. For someone else, it could be the ability to travel 6 months a year. Or maybe just working part-time in a job they love.
Or never having to work for money again. It
Yeah.
really depends on your individual values and desires. You have to do that self-reflection.
And that leads directly to the big question. What is your number?
Ah, the magic number.
Yeah. The specific amount of money you need to achieve your definition of freedom. He really pushes back against the idea that you need like tens of millions. He asks you to think hard about what truly makes you happy.
It's an important exercise. We often chase things society tells us we should want, but when you drill down, your actual needs and desires might be much simpler, and that number might be more attainable than you think.
He then introduces the 4% rule as a practical guideline. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. It's based on historical market data, specifically a study often called the Trinity study. The basic idea is that if you have a diversified investment portfolio, you could historically withdraw about 4% of its value in your first year of retirement, and then adjust that amount for inflation each following year, and have a very high probability, like over 90% in many scenarios, that your money would last for at least 30 years.
So it gives you a way to estimate how large a nest egg you might need to support your desired spending level.
Exactly. If you know you want to live on, say, $50,000 a year in retirement, you can divide that by 4%, or 0.04, to get a target portfolio size. In that case, $50,000 divided by 0.04 is $1,250,000. That becomes your number, roughly speaking.
Got it. A benchmark. And he mentions it can be flexible too, right? Like if your investments do really well.
Absolutely. If your portfolio grows significantly faster than your withdrawals plus inflation, you might be able to increase your spending over time or leave a larger legacy. It provides a buffer.
He even throws in this interesting idea of an inflation shield, potentially living somewhere with lower inflation, making your 4% withdrawal stretch even further.
Right. It highlights that your location and lifestyle choices are also part of the financial equation. It's not just about the numbers in a vacuum.
Okay, so we have money is freedom, time is the ultimate currency, and the need to figure out our number. Now, Grant argues that none of this works without a fundamental shift in how we think about money.
The mindset piece. Yeah, this is huge. He stresses that you need a wealth-building mindset, not just a spending or surviving mindset.
Our beliefs about money, often subconscious, can really hold us back or propel us forward. He actually outlines, I think, 11 different ways to think about money in the book.
We probably can't cover all 11 now, but the core idea is challenging those limiting beliefs you might have absorbed, from family or society, and consciously adopting a more abundant, resourceful perspective.
It's about seeing possibilities instead of just obstacles.
Exactly.
And this mindset shift leads to maybe one of his most controversial points: stop budgeting, at least in the traditional restrictive sense.
Yeah, that one gets people's attention. His argument is that traditional budgeting, where you track every penny and constantly tell yourself no, can reinforce feelings of scarcity. It can feel like a chore, like deprivation.
So what's the alternative?
Focus intensely on your savings rate. Calculate what percentage of your income you're saving and investing, and then make it your primary goal to consistently increase that percentage.
So shift the focus from restriction to accumulation.
Precisely. It's more empowering. You're focused on building your future freedom, not just cutting back today. He argues this is a more effective path to financial independence.
And importantly, he says you can do this without making yourself miserable. It's about being strategic, cutting back hard on things you don't value to free up money for savings and for the things you truly love.
Right. It's about conscious spending alignment, not just deprivation across the board. Find the big wins.
To drive home why this focus on saving and investing matters so much, he uses a great example of compounding.
Ah, yes, the magic of compound growth.
He shows how just $100 invested with a 10% average annual return, which is, historically achievable, though not guaranteed.
Sure, reasonable long-term average assumption for stocks.
Right. That $100 grows to over $5,300 in 40 years without adding anything else.
It's incredible. That initial seed just keeps growing exponentially. Time is the crucial ingredient.
But then he shows what happens if you add just $1 a month. Tiny amount, right?
Seems almost insignificant.
Over those same 40 years, that initial $100 plus the extra $480 total you put in one by 12 months by 40 years, grows to over $11,000.
Wow. That demonstrates the combined power of starting early and being consistent, even with small amounts. Those regular contributions turbocharge the compounding.
He also gives us a handy tool, the Rule of 72.
Yeah, love the rule of 72. So simple, so useful.
Explain it quickly.
You just divide the number 72 by your expected annual rate of return as a percentage, and the answer tells you roughly how many years it will take for your money to double.
So his example uses a 7% return. 72 divided by 7 is...
Around 10.3. So at a 7% average annual return, your money would roughly double every 10 years or so.
That's a great mental shortcut to visualize growth.
Definitely helps make compounding feel more tangible.
Okay, but we can't talk long-term growth without talking about the party pooper, inflation.
Ah, the silent thief. Yes.
He uses the price of coffee like 15 cents back in 1920 compared to easily over $2, maybe $3 or $4 today, depending on where you are. It shows how the value of a dollar just shrinks over time.
Your purchasing power erodes. That $100 saved under your mattress buys less and less each year.
He mentions the U.S. historical average is somewhere around 2–4% inflation per year.
Which means your savings and investments need to grow faster than that just to maintain their real value, let alone increase it significantly.
Right. Holding cash long-term is actually a losing strategy because of inflation.
Precisely. Your money needs to be working for you and hopefully outpacing inflation.
And he revisits that inflation shield idea. Maybe living somewhere cheaper could help mitigate its effects later on.
It's another strategic lever you could potentially pull.
Okay, so connecting all this back to our daily choices, Grant introduces this really powerful question to ask before buying something.
The future freedom question. Yeah, this is a game changer.
Ask yourself, how much future freedom is this purchase actually buying me?
Or costing you, rather.
Right, costing you. He calculated for himself that every $25 he saved was like buying one extra day of freedom in the future.
That personalizes it immediately. It makes the trade-off crystal clear. Is this gadget, this meal out, whatever it is, worth X days of my future freedom?
He really encourages everyone to figure out their own number for that. How much does one day or week or month of future freedom cost you in today's savings?
It forces you to be much more intentional with your spending. It connects your daily actions directly to your biggest long-term goals.
Now, to track progress on this journey, he says there's one number that's more important than any other.
Your net worth.
Exactly. Assets minus liabilities. Everything you own minus everything you owe. He calls it the most crucial personal finance number to track.
It's your financial snapshot, your scorecard. You need to know where you are to figure out how to get where you want to go.
He really stresses that you can't build a solid plan without knowing your starting point. You need that baseline.
And tracking it regularly, maybe monthly or quarterly, keeps you accountable and motivated. Seeing that number go up is incredibly reinforcing.
Okay, common question. I have debt, but I also want to invest. What do I prioritize?
Grant gives a clear principle. Compare the interest rates.
Simple enough.
Yeah. If your debt has a significantly higher interest rate than the return you realistically expect from investing, focus on paying down the debt first.
He uses credit card debt as the prime example, right? Rates can be like 22% or even higher.
Exactly. Compare that to maybe a 7% or 8% average historical return from the stock market. It's a no-brainer. Paying off 22% debt is like getting a guaranteed 22% return on your money. You can't beat that risk-free.
So high-interest debt is like a financial emergency. Tackle that aggressively.
Absolutely. And he strongly advises paying off credit card balances in full every single month to avoid those crazy interest charges altogether.
That seems like fundamental advice. Don't carry credit card debt if you can possibly avoid it.
It's one of the fastest ways to derail your financial progress.
Now, beyond the numbers, there's the emotional side of money. Grant points out that while finance is a numbers game, our emotions can really mess things up.
Oh, definitely. Fear and greed are powerful forces in investing and in spending, too. Panic selling during a market dip or chasing unrealistic returns.
Or just impulse buying when you feel stressed or bored.
Right. He talks about learning over time to become less fazed by market swings, understanding that volatility is normal and focusing on the long term. Losses aren't real until you sell.
Developing that emotional resilience is key. And he also mentions the power of making money management a regular habit, right?
Yeah, like checking in daily or weekly, making it part of your routine, not some big scary task you avoid. That consistency builds awareness and control.
Okay, let's circle back to the savings rate. He includes charts in the book that are pretty revealing.
Those charts are powerful visual tools. They show how dramatically your savings rate impacts how long it takes to reach financial independence, using his $1.25 million target as an example.
What's striking is how even small increases in savings rate, like just 1% more, consistently applied, can shave years off your timeline.
It really highlights that increasing your savings rate is often the most powerful lever you can control to accelerate your journey, more so than trying to chase slightly higher investment returns, which are less predictable.
So it puts the power back in your hands.
Exactly. Focus on what you can control,
Yeah.
how much you save, and how consistently you do it.
Of course, the other side of the savings rate coin is income. He touches on maximizing that too.
Right. Getting the most from your main job, negotiating salary, understanding benefits, getting promotions, that's your foundation.
And then there's the idea of side hustles.
Yeah, earning extra income outside your main job. He sees this as a huge accelerator. It provides more fuel for saving and investing.
He mentions it can evolve from just making extra cash to developing an enterprise mindset.
Right, thinking like a business owner looking for opportunities. And he highlights that the ultimate side hustle goal is often passive income.
Income you earn without actively trading your time for it. That really breaks the old work for money link.
That's where you can really scale your wealth building. Things like rental properties, royalties, online businesses that run largely on their own.
So maximize income, increase savings rate. Where do the biggest savings opportunities usually lie?
He points to the big three expense categories for most households: housing, transportation, and food.
Makes sense. That's where most of the money goes.
So making strategic changes in those areas can free up the most cash. Even small percentage cuts there can add up to significant savings.
He mentions things like house hacking.
Yeah, like renting out rooms or buying a duplex and living in one side while renting the other to cover the mortgage. Creative ways to drastically cut housing costs.
And travel hacking for transportation or leisure costs.
Using rewards, points, and strategies to travel very cheaply or even free. It's about being smart and finding leverage points in those big categories.
Okay, so you're saving all this money. Where does Grant suggest putting it?
For long-term growth, he's a big proponent of the stock market, aiming for that historical average return of around 7% or so after inflation.
And his preferred way for most people to invest in stocks.
Low-cost index funds. Simple, diversified, effective.
Why index funds specifically?
Well, first, they give you instant diversification. Buying one share of an S&P 500 index fund, for example, means you own tiny pieces of 500 of the largest U.S. companies. That reduces risk compared to picking individual stocks.
Okay, diversification. What else?
Low fees. Because they just passively track an index, they don't need expensive managers trying to pick stocks. Those low fees mean more of your money stays invested and working for you over the long run. High fees are a huge drag on returns.
And he points out that most active managers don't even beat the index anyway, right?
Exactly. Decades of data show that. So why pay high fees for likely underperformance? Just buy the index, keep costs low, and focus on your savings rate.
Makes a lot of sense. He also briefly mentions asset allocation.
Yeah, the mix between stocks and bonds, mainly. Generally, you'd have more in stocks when you're younger and have a longer time horizon, then gradually shift more towards bonds as you get closer to needing the money to reduce volatility.
Makes sense. Reducing risk as you approach the finish line. And what about using special accounts?
Oh yeah, tax-advantaged accounts are crucial. Things like 401k, IRAs,
Yeah.
both Roth and traditional HSAs if you're eligible, maybe 457Bs for some government employees.
Why are they so important?
Taxes. These accounts let your money grow either tax-deferred, meaning you pay taxes later when you withdraw, or completely tax-free, like with a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, where qualified withdrawals in retirement are tax-free, or HSAs, which can be triple tax-advantaged. It significantly boosts your long-term growth by reducing the tax drag.
And the number one rule with 401k.
Always contribute at least enough to get the full employer match if one is offered.
Why?
It's free money. An instant guaranteed return on your contribution, often 50% or 100%. Leaving that on the table is just crazy.
Good point. He also gives a quick nod to real estate investing.
Yeah, acknowledges it as another valid path. Mentions potential for appreciation, rental income cash flow, using leverage via mortgages, and again, house hacking as a way to start.
So lots of options, but the core principles seem pretty consistent.
They really are. As we start to wrap up this book talk on financial freedom, it really does boil down to some fundamental ideas that aren't overly complicated.
Yeah, we've talked about seeing money as a tool for freedom, prioritizing time, figuring out your personal number.
The huge importance of your savings rate, The magic of compounding, investing simply and cheaply, usually through index funds.
Using those tax-advantaged accounts, controlling your emotions, and focusing on the big expense categories.
It might sound like a lot when we list it out, but Grant makes the point in the book that the concepts themselves are pretty straightforward. The math is an advanced calculus.
The real challenge and the real power is in the implementation, right? Building those habits over time.
Absolutely. It's about consistent action. Taking those steps day after day, week after week, that's what builds momentum and leads to real change. Financial freedom is a marathon, not a sprint.
So maybe a good takeaway for everyone listening is to just pause and reflect. How does that idea of money buying freedom feel to you? What might your number look like?
And maybe most importantly, what's one small, actionable thing you can do today or this week? Calculate your net worth. Figure out your current savings rate. Research index funds. Just pick one thing to get started.
Because ultimately, Grant argues, the money isn't the real goal.
No, the money is the tool.
The goal is the time, the freedom, the options it provides. Time to live a life you actually design and love.
A life rich in purpose, connection, and experiences, lived on your own terms. Financial freedom makes that possible.
So well put. Well, thank you for joining us for this book talk on Grant Sabatier's Financial Freedom. We really hope these ideas have given you some inspiration and maybe some practical tools to take more control of your financial future.
We hope it sparks some positive action and helps you move toward whatever financial well-being and freedom mean to you. Keep exploring these ideas.
And if you found this useful and want more discussions like this, exploring ways to improve your financial life and gain more freedom, please do subscribe to this channel. We'd love to continue the conversation with you.